When you work in Google Sheets and you basically have a table of a lot of different kinds of data, and you decide to select that data, and then you'd really like to represent that data some way visually, then how can you do that? Well, you could use a pivot table or a chart, but here is where Google Sheets can really help. You can find Explore. And when you do that, it gives you suggestions of how you can best represent the data that you have. Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library, and let's look at Explore in Google Sheets. As I look at our example today, I can see that I really just sort of have raw numbers for about half of the year. And in column A, I even have some sort of identifier for the different stores, their store numbers. And so that's all great, but I don't really know, just looking at this spreadsheet the way it is, who did a good job, who's struggling, which month is the best. And I would like to figure out a good way to represent that information. Is it a pivot table? Is it a sort or a filter? Is it a chart? Well, Sheets may be able to help us by going to the menu bar and to Tools. And Tools is almost at the far end on the right here. But Tools may help us figure out what we want to do. So let me click on Tools, and about halfway down we have Explore. Now you may have seen Explore with older versions of Sheets because this little icon to the left of where it says Explore used to be kind of down at the bottom of the vertical scroll bar, but it has been removed, and the only way you're going to find it is through Tools, or if you like to use keyboard shortcuts, you could use Control-Alt-Shift-I, and that would get you to the same place. But let's click on Explore, and then over at the right we get this Explore pane, and it says, well, now this is for A1 through I11, all of this spreadsheet, including the totals. And so we could ask about this data. And it says, well, I would like to see a correlation of February and March. So we could click on correlation of February and March. And my goodness, look at this. It's showing me an answer. So here I have, first of all, a formula, and it shows me where the formula is and how I can figure that out, or how it was figured out for me. I don't even have to know how to write that formula for it to pop up and just configure my data, which is really important. Now I can also click on Chart, and this is a scatter chart of February and March. And then that is all for that answer. But as I go to the top, there's a left pointing arrow. Well, I can click on that arrow and it takes me back. So again, answers ask me about this data. Well, that was one of the questions. But let's look at histogram of January, and we could click on that. And so now we have a histogram of January, and it is showing us that particular chart. And we could even see the formula and how that was created. And we can, of course, rate the answer yes or no as well. Well, let's go back up to the top, click on that left arrow, and it says bottom column A by February. Well, let's click that, see what happens. So column A is store 1000, and February is 54,634. So they're really looking at column A and showing us the February numbers. And if we look at the formula, I'm kind of curious how that looks. Oh my goodness, it's a query formula. And so they have put in a lot of work into that formula that you may have no idea how to write it yourself, but they have done it for you. And then you can, of course, rate that answer as well. Let's go to the left then. And were these interesting questions, you can even rate that. Well, then we can add some formatting. And so we can choose a color palette. And right now we don't really have one, but let's try them all out. Let's go with gray. And notice how I have a fairly dark gray background for row 1 and a lighter gray background here for the total, but still lighter for every other row in between. Well, then let's go with the, I don't know, is that aqua? And then green, and that must be a gold. And it looks kind of orange to me, but maybe that's supposed to be red. Oh, here's a bright blue, and here's another darker green. And we could choose those colors. Now it says edit. Let's see what that says. Oh, look at this. We can change just the header. We can change color 1, color 2. We can change the color of the footer. So even though these are the preset default styles, we could actually go in, and where it says header, we could go to the palette here. If we liked that, we could even say done. I'm going to cancel. The only thing is, now that I have added in that color, a couple of things have happened. One is I no longer have those color palettes within the Explore pane here, and because these cells were all selected, look at the top. I now have sum, so it's added all of the numbers together. It gives me an average. Min is the smallest number in this whole group of numbers, which, as I look at it, is April and store 1010. They just had a rough month. And then the max actually shows up here in June in the totals. And so when I select the cells that are in the spreadsheet, I do get this sort of pre-made math that I don't get otherwise. Well, let's scroll down a little bit. And here is analysis. Here's all the different stores. Well, and of course, this red line at the top is the totals line. But we could click on more. Let's see what's there. We get a bar chart, and that's not too bad. Go on down. We get that. It's a line graph, but it's a filled in one. Here's a pie chart. Here's March versus February. Here's February by itself. Store 1005. We have all sorts of possibilities. Let's just click on the store 1000 and the pie chart. And then on the right, instead of clicking on the chart itself, let's see if we can click on Insert Chart. And there it is. It's made for you. Now, while this may not be the most ideal chart for what you're trying to find, look how easy that was. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to know where charts are or anything like that. That is just amazing and such a great shortcut for giving you ideas of what to do when you have a spreadsheet, but you're really not sure how to distribute that information in the best way possible. Probably the best way to learn about Explore is to simply try it. So every time you have some new data that you're, again, not quite sure, maybe you even have an idea of what you would like to do, go ahead and go to Tools and then Explore and see if you can get some really interesting ideas that help you create the best spreadsheet possible. To learn even more, be sure to go to mymcpl.org/online learning for such great resources as Universal Class, Learning Express Library, LinkedIn Learning, and Udemy Business. We also premiere videos every Wednesday and Friday at 1 o'clock. If you miss a video premiere, you'll still be able to find it later when it's convenient for you. You can find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, and you can find us on YouTube by going to our MCPL MO channel.